Success is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of decision. You rise not because you were chosen, but because you chose to rise. Stoic philosophy reminds you that the moment you choose to master your mind, you begin to master your life. But most people never make that choice. They wait, they delay, they drift. Waiting for signs, waiting for motivation, waiting for life to make it easy. And while they wait, their potential fate is. They tell themselves they're not ready, not smart enough, not lucky enough, but none of that matters. What matters is whether you're willing to stop drifting and start deciding. Get serious about your path, get serious about what you allow into your mind. Get serious about the direction you are walking, because life does not reward effort alone, it rewards focus. You can be busy and go nowhere. You can work hard and never build. You must move with clarity. You must move with purpose. And that begins with deciding that mediocrity is no longer acceptable. Not in your habits, not in your thinking, not in your energy. You cannot rise while holding on to what keeps you average. You must let go of distractions, of excuses, of softness, and choose a higher standard, not because someone told you to, but because your future depends on it. You will be tested, you will fall, you will fail. But setbacks are not the end. They are feedback, they are direction. Every fall teaches you how to stand stronger, but only if you choose to learn. Most people see failure as a wall. You must see it as a door, not an obstacle, but a threshold. Step through it again and again until you no longer fear it. You will stumble. Yes, but the greatest men in history stumbled more times than most dared to try. They failed. They fell, but they kept going, because they understood that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. You are not meant to win every time. You are meant to get up every time you don't. This is where strength is built, not in comfort, but in resistance, not in ease, but in endurance. Your mind is the battlefield. Either you take control or you lose it to distraction. You must decide to train your thoughts as you would train your body. Feed your mind with focus, not noise with vision, not entertainment. You want to grow? Then stop playing small, stop scrolling. Stop waiting, stop numbing, start thinking, start planning, start building. Every hour you spend in distraction is an hour you cannot get back, and your time is your life. Don't trade it for anything less than your purpose. Few will take this path, but those who do will not just change their lives, they will change the world. Failure is not the end. Failure is a mirror. It shows you where you are weak, where you are unclear, where you still carry illusion. But most people turn away from it. They break, they hide. They abandon the path because they believed success was supposed to feel good, was supposed to be clean, was supposed to be fast. But Stoic philosophy offers a different truth. That failure is not punishment, it is precision. It cuts away what is not real, what is not ready, what is not grounded. And in that cutting, you bleed, but you also awaken. You begin to see who you are beneath the pretending, beneath the comfort, beneath the image. Because when failure arrives, your masks fall first, and what is left is you, not the version you wanted to be, but the one you are meant to refine, and that is the beginning of something rare. You learn to stop negotiating with resistance. You learn to stop worshiping ease. You learn to face what hurts, not to suffer, but to understand. Because the man who walks through failure without flinching builds a mind that cannot be broken. He builds clarity not from what he gets, but from what he loses. He builds focus not from winning, but from watching everything collapse and choosing to keep walking. You are not here to avoid pain. You are here to walk through it with eyes open, and on the other side of that fire you will not be the same. You will be lighter, sharper, calmer, because you will have left behind the version of you that needed everything to go right. And now you need only one thing to continue, that is power. Not explosive, not dramatic, but slow, silent, unyielding. You do not panic, you do not break. You simply adjust and return, because you understand what most never learn. That failure is not something to avoid, it is something to be trained. But your resilience is not in how loud you recover, it is in how quietly you never stop. You bend, but you don't fold. You fall, but you don't disappear. You are seen, not through your victory, but through your endurance. And the world eventually recognizes The man who didn't quit even when no one watched, even when nothing worked, even when everything said turn back. You didn't not, because you knew how, but because you were committed to becoming the man who finds out. This is the discipline of progress. You don't need it to be easy, you need it to be worth it, and you are worth the struggle. The lessons, the rebuilding, the silence, because through it you are learning how to be unshakable. How to lead yourself when everything else falls, and when that is who you are, you no longer fear failure. You welcome it as a teacher, and you walk into your next season not with arrogance but with certainty. Because you've been tested and you stayed. Discipline is not restriction. Discipline is liberation. You do not train your mind to limit your life, you train your mind to take it back. Because without discipline you are a slave to emotion, to distraction, to the moments. Stoic philosophy teaches that freedom is not the absence of rules, it is the mastery of your own rhythm. Without discipline you chase every feeling and drown in each one. You react, you drift, you collapse. But with discipline you lead. You lead your time, you lead your thoughts, you lead your energy. And that is real power. Not the kind that needs to control others, but the kind that governs self. You become the man who does not flinch when the world shakes, because your movements are no longer random. They are deliberate. You wake, not by accident but on purpose. You speak not to impress but to express clarity. You work not to appear productive but to build peace. Because there is a deep peace in knowing you are in control of yourself, and that control comes from practice, from saying no when temptation whispers, from saying yes when commitment feels heavy, from choosing the difficult thing not once but daily, until difficulty no longer feels dangerous. It feels familiar. It feels like home. You stop waiting for life to make things easier. You begin living in a way that makes you stronger. And that strength is quiet. It's in the way you return to the same routine with calm. It's in the way you carry yourself when no one acknowledges your effort. It's in the way you walk away from what no longer serves your path. Discipline is not glamorous, it is not exciting. It is consistent, and consistency is what builds character. Not for a week, but for a lifetime. You want results, then build rhythm. You want to become, then build repetition. Because talent fades without structure, and desire dies without follow-through. But the man who shows up whether he feels like it or not becomes something most never touch. He becomes dependable to himself. And that dependability is rare. It's what builds trust. Not just in others, but in the mirror. You look in your own eyes and you know I said I would and I did. And that is a power you carry into every space, into every conversation, into every challenge. Because you know you are no longer controlled by chaos, you are guided by order. And order does not limit your life, it reveals it. It gives you the time to build, to think, to breathe. You are no longer pulled in every direction. You move intentionally and with weight. This is the gift of discipline. It does not make your life smaller, it makes it focused. And focus is how mountains are moved, not by noise but by daily deliberate devotion. Knowledge is not wisdom. Information is not transformation. You can read, watch, listen, consume endlessly. But if you do not act, you will not change. Stoic philosophy teaches that understanding without application is illusion. The man who knows but does not live according to what he knows is no wiser than the man who never learned. Because growth does not come from collecting truth. It comes from practicing it quietly, repeatedly. Especially when it is inconvenient, you do not need more content. You need more conviction. You already know what to do. You are just not yet the man who does it. You say you want clarity, but clarity is earned by doing, not by thinking. You cannot think your way into strength. You act your way into it. You do the work when it's cold, when it's late, when you're tired, when no one reminds you. And in that repetition, your mind clears. You don't need a new method, you need to return to the basics and live them. One breath, one action, one day. The wisest men are not always the loudest. They are the most consistent. They do what they said they would when it's boring, when it's heavy, when it's slow. Because they understand that real wisdom is not found in theory, but in behavior. You do not become better by learning. More, you become better by living better, by choosing to live in alignment with what you already know. This is what integrity means. Not perfection, but pattern. A pattern of showing up not just when it's easy, but when it's necessary, and most of life is necessity. You don't get to choose how the day unfolds, you only choose how you meet it. with focus or with reaction, with courage or with complaint, with presence or with distraction. And that choice is the difference between knowing and becoming, between watching others rise and rising yourself. So ask yourself, what do you already know that you are not yet doing? What lesson have you heard again and again, but not yet applied? That is your next step. Not another book, not another podcast, but action, something clear, measurable, repeatable. Do it for one day, then another, until you no longer need to think about it. You just live it. And that is how wisdom feels, not loud but steady, not complex but grounded. You move through life with a kind of quiet that comes from alignment, because you are no longer in conflict between what you know and what you do. You have united the two, and in that union you find peace, not because life is easier, but because your decisions are no longer scattered. You are whole, and that wholeness builds momentum. Your days become simpler, your thoughts become clearer, your results become inevitable, not by chance but by choice. This is what it means to be serious. To stop talking and start doing, not once, but always. Knowledge is easy to collect. Books, videos, quotes, ideas. But knowledge means nothing until it becomes your nature. Stoic philosophy teaches that wisdom is not what you know, but what you embody. A man can speak of peace, but still be at war with his thoughts. Man can quote discipline, but still fold at the first sign of pressure. This is the difference between philosophy and practice, between intellect and identity. You must take what you know and burn it into your behavior. You must wear it in your decisions, carry it in your breath, walk it in your presence. Otherwise, your words will betray you. You will sound strong but live soft, and that gap between appearance and action is what keeps most men stuck. They don't need more truth. They need transformation. They need to bring their ideals down from the clouds and plant them into their routines. So your question is not, what do you believe? Your question is, where does it show up in your time, in your habits, in your discipline, in your silence? Because what you repeat is what you become. And until what you believe is repeated, it will not hold weight. You must live it not once but daily. And the man who lives what he knows no longer needs to convince anyone. His presence speaks, his calm speaks, his refusal to be pulled by every distraction speaks, his loyalty to the path even when no one else walks it speaks. This is the man who has integrated his philosophy, not as decoration but as direction, and that direction becomes energy, a kind of stillness. You cannot fake a kind of clarity. You cannot buy a kind of depth that only comes from deliberate repetition of the right things, day after day, decision after decision, until there is no difference between what you know and how you live. And once you reach that point, you don't need motivation, you have identity. You don't ask how to stay focused, you are focused. You don't chase intensity, you are consistency. And that consistency builds trust, first with yourself, then with everyone you lead, because people may not remember your words, but they will never forget your energy. And your energy is shaped by what you do when no one is watching. So practice the quiet practice, the honesty practice, the structure, not to perform, but to purify your mind, your movement, your message. This is the invisible discipline that shapes visible results. And the longer you walk this path, the less you speak, because you no longer need to. Your actions say everything. Wisdom does not shout. Wisdom does not interrupt. Wisdom does not need to prove itself, because the man who is truly wise no longer seeks to be impressive. He seeks to be aligned, and alignment is quiet. Stoic philosophy teaches that true intelligence is not found in your ability to argue. It is found in your ability to remain still when the room gets loud, in your ability to observe when others react, in your ability to walk away when ego wants to stay. You do not need to prove your depth when you are rooted in it. Your presence carries what your words no longer need to, because you've done the work not just to know but to become. You've built clarity, not from books alone, but from applying them to your breath, to your responses, to your daily steps. You've replaced opinions with silence and learned that most conversations do not require your voice, just your awareness. You don't speak to be heard, you speak to be useful. And if your voice is not needed, you are content to be the one who listens. This is inner power, and it does not announce itself. It does not need likes, it does not chase spotlight, it does not decorate itself in noise. It holds, and in a world that is constantly spinning, the man who holds becomes the anchor others feel it before they understand it. They feel the calm, the certainty, the groundedness. They feel the difference between someone who knows and someone who is. Because when you are, you no longer explain, you act, you remain, you endure. This kind of wisdom is not taught, it is practiced. It is the result of time of silence, of countless hours choosing restraint over reaction, choosing patience over pride. And when you live this way, you walk lighter, not because you carry less, but because you carry better. Your thoughts become fewer but sharper, your presence becomes softer but heavier, and your direction becomes quieter but clearer. You no longer follow noise, you follow rhythm. You no longer obey pressure, you obey principle. And in this you become the kind of man who does not need to convince anyone, because your life becomes the evidence. And wisdom is seen in how you pause, in how you breathe, in how you stand. When everyone else is moving, you become the still point in a moving world. And that stillness is your wisdom, speaking not loudly but undeniably. You cannot control what the world gives you, but you can control what you hold. You cannot stop the chaos, but you can choose not to carry it. Stoic philosophy teaches that the man who is ruled from within cannot be ruled from without. The storms will come, the noise will rise, the people will shift. But if your center is anchored, you do not move with them. Because you've trained your mind to stop reacting, you've built something within yourself that the world cannot reach. Not because you are numb, but because you are rooted. You've removed your identity from outcome, from opinion, from applause. You no longer need the world to approve you. You approve yourself in silence with action. And in that shift, you take back power, the kind of power that cannot be bought or borrowed or taken away. You wake without needing attention. You work without needing reward. You lead without needing a following. Because your path is no longer dependent on validation. It is guided by values, and values are stable. They do not change when the wind blows. They do not dissolve when people misunderstand you. They hold, and when you live from that place, you become untouchable. Not because life gets easier, but because your response no longer changes when life does. You don't panic when plans fall through. You don't collapse when people leave. You don't chase when recognition fades, because none of it was your foundation. Your foundation is inner clarity, the unshakable knowing that you are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to live with weight, to show up with integrity, to speak with intention, to move with purpose. And when you live like this, you stop needing to manage everything. You simply remain, and that remaining becomes your strength. You are not distracted by the world's drama because you are busy honoring your own rhythm. And that rhythm does not change because someone disapproves, because someone doubts, because someone misunderstands. You no longer live for what the world gives you. Live for what you give to it, and what you give is stability. You become the calm in the conversation, the stillness in the storm, the clarity in the confusion, because that is who you've chosen to become, not by accident, but by practice. Daily quiet repeated. You've taught your mind to remain when others run. You've trained your energy to hold when others shake. And that training now speaks louder than words ever could. You are not pulled, you are planted. You are not swayed, you are settled. You are not owned by anything you do not control, and that is freedom. Not because life is predictable, but because you are. You've become the man who doesn't need the world to be calm. To be calm, you are not here to chase results. You are here to honor your standard. Results come and go. Some days they rise, some days they disappear. But your standard is what stays. Your standard is what defines you. Stoic philosophy teaches that your days are not measured by what you gain. They are measured by who you become in the process. The man who lives by outcome will always be restless. He will hurry. He will compare. He will exhaust himself for approval. But the man who lives by principle is steady. He does not need the reward to do the work, because the work is already part of who he is. He trains because he values strength. He studies because he values clarity. He acts because he values movement. This is not about ambition. This is about alignment. Doing what is right, not when it's convenient, but because it's required. Every morning you are given a choice to drift or to direct, to live passively or to live purposefully. You do not need to win the world today. You need to keep your word to yourself. You said you would rise early, then rise. You said you would focus, then focus. You said you would finish, then finish, because every time you keep a promise, you build identity. And identity is what carries you. When motivation leaves, the world will tell you to chase numbers, to chase speed, to chase image. But numbers fade, speed crashes, and image never lasts. What lasts is integrity. The invisible line you do not cross even when no one is watching. What lasts is discipline. The quiet structure you return to. When the noise gets loud, what lasts is self-respect. The earned weight you carry when you know you have lived your day with intention. You will not always control results, but you will always control your response. How you breathe, how you show up. How you finish, and that is more powerful than any goal. Because goals can be missed, but standards can be honored. You want to grow? Then live by standard, not by scoreboard. Do what you said. Not because it's measured, but because it's right. And when you live that way, you stop burning out. You stop chasing shadows. You stop needing applause because the reward is already in the rhythm. You walk, you build. You become, not because the world says so, but because you said so. And you are the authority of your own life, not the market, not the comments, not the pressure. And that realization is what will free you from the constant noise, because now you are no longer driven by outcome, you are driven by ownership. The man who needs results to feel worthy will never rest. He will chase, he will compare. He will measure himself by numbers that were never meant to define him. But the man who lives by what is right, not what is popular, not what is profitable, not what is praised, that man moves different. He walks slower but with more weight. He speaks less, but with more clarity. He builds smaller, but with deeper roots. And over time, what he builds outlasts what others race towards. Stoic philosophy teaches that results are not the proof of worth. The process is how you live, how you move, how you return to the work without needing applause. That is the true measure, because results come and go. They are delayed, they are distorted, they are misunderstood. But discipline does not waver, and your internal compass does not lie. You wake and you ask, what is required of me today? Not what do I feel like doing? Not what will get me more attention? Not what will make others notice? But what keeps me aligned with the man I said I would become. And then you move without drama, without rush, without bargaining. Because this is no longer about reward. It is about rhythm. You rise, you act, you build because it is time. And when you no longer need the outcome to feel whole, you begin to move with real power. You become unshakable because your center is no longer external. You are not fueled by wins, you are fueled by values. And that cannot be taken, so you keep walking through rejection, through silence, through failure, through delay. You stay in while others quit. You get quieter, you get sharper, you get stronger. Because you are no longer controlled by what is temporary. You are guided by what is eternal, your word, your work, your presence. You are no longer asking, when will it happen? You are asking, am I aligned? And when you are, the results begin to arrive. Not because you chased them, but because you became the man who attracts them. Without noise, without need, without forcing. They come because of who you are. And who you are was built in the quiet repetition of doing what is hard without reward until reward no longer mattered. Only the rhythm. This is how you grow, not by chasing, but by choosing your standard over your emotion, choosing your path over your comfort, choosing the day over the dream, because dreams without discipline fade. But daily action builds a reality stronger than any dream. You are not here to wait for success. You are here to create structure, and that structure will outlive you. Because when others ask, how did you do it? You won't say motivation. You will say, I walked when it wasn't working. I built when no one believed. I returned when no one clapped. I lived not by outcome, but by order. And eventually the outcome came anyway. The man you want to be is not found in a single breakthrough. He is not waiting at the end of a motivational speech or hidden in one perfect morning. He is found in the repetition, in the slow, quiet, deliberate cycle of showing up again and again. Stoic Philosophy teaches that strength is not forged in intensity but in consistency, that it is not what you do when you feel powerful, but what you do when you feel nothing, when the emotion is gone, when the results are flat, when the path feels heavy. You still walk. That is the difference between movement and momentum, because movement is easy when energy is high, but momentum is built when no one sees, when the repetitions have no applause, no spotlight, no fanfare, just you and the next step. You rise, you act, you finish. Not because it's exciting, but because it's what is required. This is how greatness is built, not through explosive effort, but through reliable effort. You do the push-ups, you write the sentence, you breathe with intention, you walk the same trail, and you do it not once, not twice, but daily. Until what used to feel hard now feels familiar, until what used to require force now flows with ease. Not because it became easier, but because you became stronger. Repetition is the soil in which identity grows. You plant your values in every small action, and over time they take root, until one day you no longer need to try. You simply are. You are disciplined. You are steady. You are grounded. Not because you say so, but because your days say it. For you, and people around you will feel it. They won't know why, but they will trust you more. Because people feel consistency. Even when they don't understand it, you become the one who holds. When others bend, you become the one who follows through. When others negotiate, you become the one who chooses truth. When others choose convenience. And that is the quiet power of repetition. You are not special on any given day. You are not impressive in any single moment. But over time, you become undeniable. Because there is nothing more uncommon than a man who honors his word to himself. Not just in the moments when it's visible, but in the repetition no one ever sees. You make your bed. You train your body. You train your mind. You hold your tongue. You complete the work again and again, not for reward but for refinement. Because each repetition shapes who you are, and the more you repeat, the more you return. The more you remain, the stronger your foundation grows. You stop needing motivation. You stop needing conditions. You just move because it's time, because it's who you are. And that is when everything changes, not because life got easier, but because your rhythm got deeper. You're no longer thinking, you're living. You're no longer planning. You're practicing. You've become what others are still trying to convince themselves to be: quietly, patiently, powerfully. Stability is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It does not need a reason to remain, because the man who is stable has already chosen his rhythm. And rhythm is not emotion. It is not speed. It is not popularity. It is alignment. Stoic philosophy reminds you that the strong man is not the one who moves fastest or shouts the clearest. It is the one who keeps moving even when no one is looking, even when no one agrees, even when no one stays. He walks with his own rhythm. He wakes without external pressure. He does not speed up when others sprint. He does not slow down when others stop. His compass is internal. His pulse is sovereign. And when storms come, he does not panic, because panic is not part of his rhythm. He breathes. He adjusts. He continues, not out of pride but out of principle. Because this rhythm was chosen, it was built through countless days of repetition, of practice, of silence. And once you build this rhythm, you become immovable. Not physically, but mentally. No matter how loud the world gets, your rhythm stays. No matter how quiet the feedback is, your rhythm stays, because you no longer live off reaction, you live off structure. And that structure is not rigid. It is reliable. You are not stiff. You are stable. You are not hiding. You are holding. And that holding makes you powerful in a way that few understand. Because they expect strength to look a certain way, to speak a certain way. But your strength is silent because it is rooted. And roots do not need approval to keep growing. They simply stay in the soil that supports them. You have become that soil through years of showing up when it didn't feel worth it. Through seasons of building without results. Through moments of choosing consistency over validation. And now, you are no longer shaken by someone else's pace. You know who you are, you know how you move, you know what matters. And that knowing is a shield against chaos. While others chase noise, you return to your breath. While others crave urgency, you return to your steps. While Others panic, you hold, and in that holding, you show the world what it means to live deliberately. You don't seek to dominate. You seek to align. You don't need to rush because you've learned that anything worth building takes time, and anything built too fast falls too soon. You would rather walk for a decade in silence than sprint for a year and collapse because your destination is not just achievement. It is mastery, and mastery lives in rhythm. Not in sprints, not in spikes, not in moments, but in months and years of remaining. You do not need to dominate the world. You need to master yourself because mastery does not look like victory. It looks like rhythm, a quiet discipline that shows up every morning, without fanfare, without urgency, without doubt. It looks like a man who has chosen his structure and keeps choosing it even when no one else does. That structure is not a cage. It is a foundation. It is the shape that protects you from chaos, the weight that holds you when life pulls hard, the rhythm that carries you when the wind shifts. Stoic philosophy teaches that freedom without form leads to collapse, but freedom within form leads to power, and power is not domination. Power is steadiness. You no longer need to move fast because you move with direction. You no longer need to be known because you are whole. You no longer need to be praised because you are aligned. You've become a man who no longer reacts but responds, not with panic, but with principle, not with urgency, but with rhythm, and that rhythm has shaped your life into something few ever build. A life with weight, not in noise but in presence, not in moments but in consistency, not in display but in foundation. You have removed the distractions, you have refined your routine, you have created a code you live by, and now you do not ask, what will this bring me? You ask, is this aligned with the man I said I would become? And that question guides your steps. Not fame, not emotion, not results, but alignment. You wake, you act, you complete. Not because you have to, but because it is right, and in that you find peace, not because life is easy, but because you have become ordered. Your world is not free of challenge, but your mind is free of chaos, because it is anchored in a rhythm. You chose one step at a time, one breath at a time. You've built something that cannot be moved because it was built by showing up when no one asked and no one watched. You've become not loud but lasting, not hurried but heavy, not restless but reliable. This is the outcome of living with structure. Life that does not shake when others fall. Life that does not fade when the noise ends. A life that does not wait to be noticed because it is rooted in something far deeper. Purpose, principle, presence. You do not chase, you embody. You do not demand, you demonstrate. You do not force, you follow the rhythm you created. And that rhythm has made you a man of depth, a man of direction, a man who does not need the world to slow down because he is already steady.